In a squalid government housing unit, overcrowded, too small, and outdated, children play. There are gnomes and dims and Tim and Veer children about, but this is mostly a Lorkuz community. The Torn has adapted to life in the New Tech slums, and the community is close. Even the non-aliens have been semi-adopted into the family structure. The buildings in this neighborhood of the New Tech shaft are old, just shy of dilapidated. Originally built with a philosophy of function over form, they were never beautiful to behold. Each unit is Spartan, with little consideration for privacy or comfort. The massive, multi-storied structures reach to the non-existent sky. They used to house humans, but when construction of a new subshaft got approved 30 years ago, and the permits miraculously cleared only 5 years later, and the project got funded the next quarter, the new dwellings were built, and these were cleared out. New Tech Housing Authority approved applications for 37 entire Torns, a population north of 10,000 souls, to move into District 84B, and charging them rent that more than made up for the taxes charged to New Tech by the UTR for building the new subshaft. Inside, unauthorized alterations have been made throughout the buildings. Entire walls have been torn down, creating larger living spaces that reflect the Lorca's culture and need for togetherness. They cannot understand the human capacity for isolation and silently shake their heads at the madness this clearly brings, and the sadness they so often see in the species that gave them safe harbor on their planet and all the vast, unforgiving emptiness of space. But humans will be human, and there may be no saving them from themselves. The Lorcas abide, quietly observing, and hoping for the best for their hosts. In the meantime, they make do for themselves. They know the wisdom and joy of a simple life, and are grateful for the freedom they enjoy on earth. They have not forgotten the oppression of their former masters. The neighborhood is old, and many things have fallen into disrepair with use and time. The Torn does a fair good job at maintenance and upkeep, but they often cannot afford to fix what gets broken. Nonetheless, the residents take pride in their surroundings, keeping things neat and orderly, trying in vain to make the cold architecture seem warm by adding homey touches. A flower bed here, a colorful banner there, but the steel buildings are rusted and stark. Outside on the playground, three young Lorcas race around a jungle gym obstacle course. Leaping, swinging, almost defying gravity, they fly through the air. Chasing, tagging, charging, horseplay that turns into good-natured roughhousing. Adults keep a wary eye on the exuberant wrestling, remembering the boundless energy of youth and perhaps wishing that they could recapture some of that magic and take it with them to work. The youngest of these three happens to be the biggest and the most rambunctious. She is also the reason the elders are watchful, worried. Her name is Zar'fuul, and she is not like the others. She has a keen sense of justice and concerns herself overmuch and too often with what she thinks is fair and unfair. At school, she has argued with her teachers, and at home, she's been obstinate and stubborn with her birth parents. She's been prone to tantrums that escalate into significant events. In the heat of these fits, she's been known to slam her head into the ground in a rage, and last month, in her flailing, she accidentally lashed out at Hagen, her home father, nearly tripping him down a flight of stairs. Luckily, he was okay, but it had been a close call. The leader of their torn, Tanil, sits near the playground, watching Zar'fuul with a knowing eye. Soon, he knows, a test will come. He's been watching Zar'fuul for a week now. Her provider mother and teacher mother both asked Tanil to be ready since the incident with Hagen. It had been precipitated when Hagen had told Zar'fuul's home sister to put away their toys in preparation for the arrival of the house's first father. Zar'fuul felt like this was the greatest of injustices, as she was keen to keep playing with her home sister, and the resulting tantrum got out of hand. Since then, Tanil had been called in to be nearby. As Zar'fuul and her friends climbed and chased each other, Tanil began to relax. Perhaps the concern was not warranted after all. Perhaps a test is not coming. Perhaps it's already passed. Zar'fuul had been spending extra time with the teachers, and Shinto, who was known for being especially gentle and nurturing, had taken an interest in the wild child over the last 3 weeks. He hoped the fire had been extinguished before it truly began to blaze. He thought he might keep an eye on Zar'fuul tomorrow, maybe a day more, but if nothing out of the ordinary transpired, he will tell Zar'fuul's parents that they can breathe easy. It was at this moment, when it seemed that everything would come back to harmony, that the notes of discord struck, and the test was indeed upon poor Zar'fuul. She was at the top of the jungle gym, her large top left arm raised skyward in victory, both feet clinging strongly to the metal bars, her bottom left arm holding one of the playmates down as she roared victoriously at the artificial sun in the holographic sky. Below, and very much minding their own business, another small group of children played at their own game. A Timonvir child and two dwerg were next to a skinny gnome. They had built an obstacle course, and the gnome had produced a drone and was piloting through the course. The Timonvir child got impatient and excited and wanted to turn, grabbing the drone's controller from the gnome. The gnome immediately became agitated and cried out. The two dwerg, sensing better play than drones on obstacle courses, held the smaller child back in the time-honored bully ritual of keep away. From her perch at the top of the jungle gym, Zar'fuul witnessed all this and flew into a rage. Faster than Tanil thought a child could react, he saw Zar'fuul not leap from the top of the jungle gym, but throw herself towards the children playing on the ground. With all the repressed rage and anger of the last few weeks, she landed in a rain of fists, elbows, kicks, and fangs. Tanil leapt up himself, but the torn leader was old, and it took him several seconds to reach the scuffle. By that time, 2 or 3 other Lorkuz adults had hastened to pull apart the combatants. The young gnome was no worse for wear. He'd backed away from the conflagration immediately. He was, however, inconsolable. His drone lay in pieces on the battlefield. Slowly, deliberately, Tanil and one of the other adults gathered up the pieces and handed them to the boy child. Take these and our sincere apologies, little one. Tell your birth father and care mother that they may seek the house of Tanil tomorrow night, and the Torn will make recompense. Looking deeply into the boy's eyes, Tanil asked, Can you remember that? Sniffing, the child nodded as he gathered the pieces. He looked at Zar'fuul, and Tanil grimaced to see something very like gratitude on the young boy's face. That would not do. Not at all. Begone now, little one. The gnome heard a sternness in the elder Lorkuz's voice that had not been there a moment ago, and ran off. Tanil turned next to the dwerg and the Timonvir. He looked them over, scanning for obvious injuries. Thankfully, there were none. For all of Zar'fuul's exuberance, she lacked any expertise in just how to land a blow. For their part, both the dwerg ignored Tanil and the other adults, their eyes locked on Zar'fuul. There, lads, are you hurt? Big, strong young men like yourselves, not troubled by a little Lorkuz child, are you? When they did not respond, Tanil instinctively crouched down and reached out to the nearer dwerg with one of his lesser arms, a gesture of touching and reassurance, and to his great shame the boy recoiled in fear. He hit me, he said searchingly, his world reordered. She can't hit me. She's a Lorkuz. The young dwerg, broad-shouldered and bulky, looked around him and seemed to notice all the adult Lorkuz for the first time. It was as if he saw Lorkuz for the first time. Not the placid smiles or the patient eyes, but the powerful simian frames. Blue, four-armed gorilla-like aliens from space, stranded on a planet not their own and trying their best to fit in, even centuries later. A new respect dawned in the eyes of these children, but it was a respect that Tanil knew came at too dear a price. He did not want his people to be feared. Lorkuz were people of peace, and he worked hard every day to preserve the old ways so that it stayed that way.